I think we'll just start in the interest of time. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Anybody in the hall, please just, yeah. Thank you so much. So Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim and Assalamu Alaikum to all of you. I know it's a horrible session, just as the last session before lunch, but unfortunately we are the ones who are keeping you away from lunch for some time. The topic, of course, has already been presented by the moderator, the lady who was announcing this session. Privatization and private sector participation. So what we've observed is that around the world, successful privatization as such is not taken as a fiscal or financial tool. In fact, it is more of a transformative reform, shifting economies from state-driven operations to your competitive, efficient, market-based ecosystem. And countries that have done it well have seen actually stronger capital markets, higher productivity, service delivery, and greater investor confidence. And more importantly, they have seen governments focusing their energies where they're needed the most, like regulation, social protection, and enabling long-term economic growth. So for Pakistan, this shift doesn't seem to be just a desirable thing to do. In fact, it is something very, very essential. Because these large state enterprises, they absorb valuable financial resources, whereas the private sector growth potential remains underutilized. So yet we are at a very promising moment where the government of Pakistan has expressed its renewed commitment to privatization. And also the private sector seems to be ready to invest where opportunities are structured transparently. And I personally believe that Pakistan's capital market, with the right reforms, of course, can act as a central engine to channeling investments into our economy. So since the introduction has already been given, we have Minister Saab for Privatization, we have Arif Habib Saab, who's the leading private sector investor, we have Naz, who's representing IFC, and of course, Farrukh Sabzwari Saab, who is the CEO of Pakistan Stock Exchange. Ali Saab, I'll just start off with you, sir. Thoda sa lamba bhi question hai, but you can just mold it as you want. We've seen as to, I don't know why in Pakistan, there's this large government footprint across businesses. And so what do you think, would be the benefits if the government has to let loose of some of its control, reduce this footprint, and taking advantage of your presence here, if you can just quickly brief us also on, the government's privatization roadmap, and what criteria actually is being, adopted to ensure which SOEs is going to be moved first?
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you, Musarrat. So there are three parts to your question. Advantages, I think they're very well known. Obviously, we are funding the losses from the fiscal space, so that will be avoided. It'll take a while, but I think more than that, we are avoiding competition. We don't have a competitive landscape in the country because the government has a large footprint in so many industries. Secondly, what we have done is, because of the large government footprint, we have moved away from merit-based society. What is happening is, because the SOEs are managed by different ministries, and there's no one ministry, every ministry has different entities that they're looking after. And people in the ministries, bureaucracy keeps changing, average of 1 to 2 years, and politicians keep changing every 5 years or so. So when new people come, there's a natural tendency to favor, appoint, and people are comfortable with people they know. So we have developed a society which is based on who you know rather than what you know. So we have, over a period of time, moved away from merit, and that has led to brain drain in the country. A lot of people have left because people are not rewarded based on merit. So there's a deeper issue at a social level, but we have killed, or we are killing, the merit-based society. We are killing competition. At the same time, because of the large footprint, the service delivery is suffering. The efficiency is lower. The productivity is lower. A lot of these organizations are overstaffed. We are just privatizing PIA, and a number of people have been let go over the last few years. Still, PIA is overstaffed, despite all of that. So these decisions of hirings were done by some people. What was the motivation? Why were they allowed to do it? Is there any accountability? We have let go of those people, but nobody has been held responsible. So what is the accountability? Every year we lose around 1,000+ billion rupees, but nobody is responsible. So In terms of advantages, I think the overall economy, if we really want to grow, we have to have a model in which people whose money is at stake, they are the ones who are taking decisions. Just to give an example, different ministries are running various entities lose money, but the money is not going from the pockets of any of us, including myself. I'm running a ministry right now, right? So I think there'll be huge advantages if we realize that we have to take the government out of the businesses which are not strategic. So that's one. You also asked about?
What is the current government's privatization roadmap and the criteria primarily that you're using as to which SOEs is to be privatized first? Okay,
so the criteria was laid down by cabinet a few years ago that whichever entity is not a strategic entity should be privatized. Now that's a very broad term, and different people will have different views on what is strategic and what is not strategic. So that has, and then between the loss making and profit making, there is no differentiation as far as the decision is concerned, with the preference to privatize loss making first. But at PC, we are very clear that losses and profits should not be part of the criteria. If something is not strategic, it should be let go. So that's one. So we have a committee, cabinet committee on SOEs, which looks at these entities at PC, we evaluate and we recommend to them. But what is happening is right now we have a list of around 24 entities. A number of entities are still not on the privatization list, which were there 20, 30 years ago in Pakistan. Swiss, for example, were on the privatization list at one point in time. PSO was on privatization list at one point in time. Railways, we talked about. Steel mills, we talked about. Yeah. These are not on privatization list. So frankly, at the moment, we are taking it in a stepwise manner. We want to deliver on a few transactions and then go to the government that let's add more. We have done First Wind Bank, small transaction, but every transaction needs to go through a certain process. Right. So we followed that. PIA, we are hopeful. Both the buying consortiums, Arif and Tabasa and Air Blue and Fauji, they're all around. So I think first quarter next year we'll try to add more. But in the 24 list, there have been some additions. The 3 airports, Karachi, Lahore, Islamabad, we are adding them to the privatization, but we won't be selling them. We'll be giving them for long-term concession because the service delivery is not very good at the airports. So we're doing that. We're adding the generation plants. And I think going forward, we will look at the petroleum chain and try and add that. So that's how we are operating.
So I think perfect. What you said basically is the skin in the game is also something which is absolutely essential and important. And I, due to the paucity of time, I'll just actually go by the questions as, with the flow of the discussions. But I would really love to also know, the role of capital markets. So I'm also be posing this question to Farrukh Saab. How strategic is, the Pakistan Stock Exchange's role or the capital markets in general to, be a supportive element to the Pakistan's and the government's privatization agenda? And, are there any reforms that you think, they are very critical? Because you see what the stock exchanges typically are also required, in addition to, of course, the listings and, the public offerings, a deepening institutional investors' interest. So what are you doing for that?
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, PBC, for an excellent conference. I've heard day one was even better. So I'm sorry I arrived this morning. Topic at hand, privatization. So let's just think about it for a second. It's a change of hand from public sector to private sector. And that change of hand is a journey. And that journey requires an uptick in terms of governance. It means less dole-outs, less subsidies. It means profitability, focus on professional management. It means less political interference, which has also been mentioned. Globally, and especially in Asia, markets have been used to deliver all of this. And that is what we should be doing as well in Pakistan, which is use the capital market to deliver on privatization and to deliver on really, I keep saying this to people, finally, the capital market actually has a seat on the table. And think about it. For years on end, we've not had a seat on the table. Because of which PSX or the stock market has not really been used as a harbinger of capital formation, which is really the task at hand for the PSX. So not only for privatized entities or the privatization program, but to encourage other companies to list and to approach the PSX for their capital formation need. What are we doing about it? So we've reopened every chapter in the book at PSX, whether it's adding investors. So we're looking at how do you ease the investor journey. And we've done a lot of work with SECP. Hopefully some sanity will prevail, because a Sahuliat account, for example, which is risk-free account, our objective is it should be opened in literally 10 minutes or 15 max. But a risk-free account should not open in hours or days, which is what the journey is today. So that's the starting point. And so we're having to deal with some very elementary things like account opening and the journey and reopening that chapter, to even high end of the pyramid stuff like ESG, where clearly, even though we have a product in the market which is an ESG contributory tool that we formed with the London Stock Exchange, which is called Refinitiv, to date, only 20 companies have used this as a contributory tool. So out of the 540 odd listed companies, only 20 have come on board. So that's the high-end stuff, which clearly we need to sort, and we're using, thanks to IFC and awareness raising on that score, to deliver on this high end. But in the middle come also listings, and why they are so few and far between. Just last week, I was in Faisalabad, ashamed, 30 years in the business, about 10 abroad, but 20 here, first time in Faisalabad. I'm sure commercial bankers are there every week, maybe, or every month, once at least. And hence, we need to see more bankers come to the fore. If you remember this conference that we had a month and a half or 2 months ago, where the title was Unlocking Opportunity for the Banks, and I think the FM turned around, if he was here today, he'd say, why are we only talking about privatization? Because this capital market needs to be accessed by every and anybody on the street, including investors plus companies that are about to list. So my first time there, but the funny part is, all of the brokers who accompanied me, and 7 or 8 of them, also their first time. Now what is that telling you? We've let the ecosystem be. Market upar, niche, that is all we're interested in. Deepening of market, we've not really taken too much interest in. It's only now, with that seat at the table, we're actually using to open every box in the book, whether it's, as I said. So the good part is that while markets were asleep, we worked expeditiously on our infrastructure. So everything is touch of a button. You trade, you settle, and you have custody, all touch of a button. So that way we are covered. And we just had exchanges from abroad coming in. There was an international conference, and they're extremely impressed with whatever technology is available in Pakistan. So there is good news too. When it comes to listings, I keep telling people, I have taken a number of job-losing propositions ever since I joined. One, that we should at least have 1%, only 1% of the population as investors. We don't at the moment. It's 0.18 or 0.17%. So that's first job-losing proposition. 2, more listings. I think we have a 12 in 12 pipeline. I'm very comfortable with 7 or 8, but we may have 12 in 12. What do I mean by that? 12 listings in 12 months, inshallah. And I think we are good to go on that. 2 in the pipeline, approving next week. Young population, how we engaged with them. Gamification is a strategy. So we launched a gamification strategy called Battle of the Bulls. We had 5,800 odd children subscribed. What did we give the winners? ETFs. We did not give them money. So it will force them to open an account and trade if they need to. And what's the future? To deepen markets, more products. Next week, cash settled futures are being launched. February onwards, T+1 settlement. June, options. So we have a very busy pipeline, listing, plus investor roadshows, and obviously what we're doing from a deepening angle, which I just mentioned.
Thank you, Farrukh Sahab, and I think there's a lot happening at the stock exchange,
Yes.
but as you also mentioned, a lot needs to be done with respect to that awareness, that approaching the market itself. And perhaps I think also, more closer coordination between the private and public sector. So we already have that new capital market, development council that has been notified. I hope PSX being, part of that council is going to take up these matters also with the government level, at the government level, because the finance minister himself is chairing.
So let me just update you there as well, because you mentioned the first meeting is tomorrow. We just had a pre-huddle SEC chair and the CMII's CEOs plus Munir Kamal from the banking council. Javed Saab, you're part of that council as well. And yes, we've sidelined quite a few issues which are pertinent for the government to handle. So as I said, I'm just very happy that the capital market has a seat at the table. And we've got tailwind, which is helping us as well. So we should just use that tailwind to deliver on all of these issues that I just pointed out.
Right. So moving to Arif Saab, being one of Pakistan's leading private sector investor. Based on your own experience, Arif Saab, in turning around, industrial and financial sector enterprises, what are the governance model or, the structures that you believe are most suitable for ensuring some kind of value, post-privatization?
Yeah. You see that before I give the specific answer of your question, I would like to add the benefits of the privatization, you see. Presently, Pakistan owns about 90 trillion of rupees of assets in public sector, the gross assets. And the average yield on that is only 1%. So government earns only 1% out of that, whereas government borrows at the average rate of over 15%. So every year, Pakistan incurs about 14% of negative arbitrage by holding these assets with it. This is number one. Number two, I think if we look at the companies which in fact were privatized, which have been privatized, they have made a very, very impressive turnaround. For example, banks, and I would say that in Pakistan, the privatization program has been very, very successful in the past. The banking sector, which in fact used to suck billions of rupees every year by injecting capital in them by the government. But after the privatization, each of the bank, those banks are contributing over 50 billion rupees per year as a tax. And their salary bill has in fact multiplied number of times. So these are the results of the privatization in Pakistan. So these are the added benefit. And the other benefit, you see the groups which in fact participated in privatization in Pakistan, look at their growth. They also were able to grow and become large, and they in fact invested in then other sectors of the economy. So that also is a very good. And fourthly, I believe the services which in fact the public sector was providing to the general public was pathetic. And after the privatization, the services in fact have improved a lot. If you take banking, if you take telecom, telecom also is the example where after the privatization, you see their services have improved. Because before the privatization, it used to take about 3 months, 4 months time to take a connection, telephone connection. And now I think it's very easy to take. So these are the added advantages which I think also in fact convince us to have the privatization program aggressively. As far as the ownership structure and the governance structure is concerned, I believe that in ownership there are a number of sectors where in fact we would be needing the foreign investment where technology is required. So wherever the technology is required, I think we encourage those foreign investors to come to Pakistan and partner with the local investors. You see, only the foreign investment for consumer item is not beneficial for Pakistan. It becomes a liability, because then their profits go outside the country every year, and it is not beneficial. So we should be selective on the foreign investment, whereby they actually contribute in improving the sectors. And the public-private, that the private sector would partner with them, that they will teach them, and technologically they will also, the local investor will also improve. The other, I think, area is of listing. Listing, I think, is very, very beneficial for the corporate governance, for the transparency, for the benefits of all the stakeholders. Even, I think, not only the sponsors, the shareholders, the public shareholders, the regulators, the government as well. The government is also a very important stakeholder in every company. You see, the government is a partner of about 50% or more than 50% in every company's profits.
So my question on this one would be, are you referring to actually listings post-privatization, or are you saying that, a certain stake should actually be offloaded in the market during the privatization scheme?
Yes, I'm talking about the post-privatization, you see, because the pre-privatization through stock exchange is not viable. You see, generally, the management carries a premium, but the secondary market doesn't give the premium. So if the government would go to the market and try to privatize that, they will not get the right price there at that moment of time. But when the private investor would go and bid for the majority, they will get the premium, and then it would be their own interest to get that company listed at the stock exchange post-privatization. So that post-privatization will in fact give them in fact, it will become their investment will become liquid, so they can in fact make their investment bankable as well, and the transparency will also increase. You see, the listed companies are being covered by the securities brokerage house research departments very extensively. And they, in fact, comment on every aspect of the company's management and company's business, which benefits all the stakeholders. And that also creates a competition element amongst the management and the board, because they have to give the results to the general public, to the market every quarter. So that keep them on toes, and that improves their performance. So that, I think, would be helpful in fact, improving their performance post-privatization as well.
Thank you so much, sir. Naz, I'll be coming to you. Actually, in the interest of time, I've been supposed to, just rush with the session. So, but from the IFC's global perspective, I mean, what best practices do you think, in structuring privatization transactions can help Pakistan achieve, a more fairer valuation, probably even more stronger competition, and for, sustainable long-term outcomes as well?
Thank you, Musarrat. So I'm just going to pick up a couple of threads from here before I get to that question. And from what the minister said, when we're talking about privatization, why is the private sector important in the first place, right? I mean, other than the fact that it can attract investment, it can generate wealth, the competition that he's talking about, I mean, you have to understand the private sector also innovates, right? Because the core objective of private sector versus public sector, where public sector you're delivering public service goods and social welfare impact, private sector's core objective is profit. And in that drive for profit, you bring about efficiencies, you bring about, there's competition, there's innovation, and that's what actually allows you to move and be competitive. So I think that's why the private sector becomes really important. But coming to your question, all privatizations are by nature political, right? Whether there are multiple pressure points, whether it's staff or unions or politicians, etc. So it's important that you prepare for it well, you stay the course, and then you execute, right? So I mean, just a few points that I'll say, and it's really not rocket science, right? But I think like the minister said, start off with the easier ones, because you have to look at it like a program. Start off with the easier ones. You have to establish credibility. That is one thing that attracts investors, right? Establish credibility by the easier ones, then move on to the other ones. But really the key points: address regulatory issues up front, right? So you should have a clear regulatory framework. That's very important. Avoid unrealistic timelines and those pressures, which is we prepare for them well if it takes that time. Have rational pricing expectations. That's another key thing. While you're structuring it, and you can do privatizations or you can do concessions, which is private sector participations. Those are also a very effective way of actually bringing in the private sector. Balanced risk allocation when you're structuring it. There has to be a sense of fairness, right? A very transparent and competitive bidding process. That's important. You must have clear and consistent rules and practices for repatriation of capital and any return or dividends, right? And that you should. These are essential because you increase your pool of investors and you bring in good investors. You start establishing this track record and you build a program, and you will automatically see that you will start achieving those valuations that you want. Because remember that today people, whether you overtly see it or not, but when people are asking for a 20% dollar IRR or anything, when they're looking for returns on the privatization, there's a reason they're asking for that, right? Because they feel that the risk is high, whether it's a regulatory risk or whatever it is. The minute you start establishing and you show consistency and you start showing, this risk starts coming down. People are okay doing a 15% transaction. People are okay doing a 12%. So then once you've done the privatization, it doesn't stop there, and it shouldn't stop there. What happens post facto? That's also really important. What happens to that organization that you have privatized? It's important that we follow through on that. How is it performing a year later? How is it performing 3 years later? That should matter to all of us, right? Including government. If it hasn't done well, what needed to change, right? So we must take our learnings from there, and go back. The other thing I will also say, other than this question, the other really important question which one should consider upfront is, you asked me what achieves good valuations and long-term sustainable outcomes. But the question, and I'll put this to the minister as well, is what would you consider as a successful privatization? And I would suggest that is one thing you should discuss and debate upfront before you undertake the privatization, because you have so many stakeholders that everyone has a different view on what is a successful. Is it how much money you get up front? Is it who you bring in? Is it the community, whether it's going to benefit? What happens to the sector? So if you put down your KPIs and you agree and you have a consensus on what will you consider to be a good privatization at the time of privatization, and 3 years later, I think you will be much better off.
Absolutely, completely agreed. And I think before we open up the forum for question and answers, I would still ask a question to Minister Saab, Ali Saab, as I think Naz already mentioned that part of it, is that have there been in Pakistan really successful privatization? Would they categorize them as successful privatization over the last at least 2 decades? And if you think no, what is making us hopeful and confident that we are going to have those successful privatizations going forward?
I think we have had a very, very successful privatization program, frankly. But before that, let's define what is successful privatization. Very good question. Successful privatization, and different people will look at differently, but I think privatization is a means to an end. We, at Privatization Commission, it's our job, and that's what we are cognizant of. We want to use these privatizations to improve the sector, not just the entity. As far as entity is concerned, we will sell it and we will get a certain amount of money if the money is going to the government. In some of these, the money is going into the entity because they need to be revamped. But privatization is an opportunity to revamp the sector, to change the sectoral policies. And a successful privatization would be that post-privatization, the sector becomes healthy. Customers/consumers get better service, more innovation happens, more players can enter, there's more competition. So it is much beyond that entity. It is at a sector level and at an economy level, because all of these privatizations have an impact on the GDP. Just PIA, our contribution of the aviation sector in Pakistan is one of the lowest in GDP, is one of the lowest in the country. So what we would be looking forward, and what we have done is, our airlines are all struggling, whereas foreign airlines are getting a very decent share of our market. The passengers who go from here to Middle East, a large number is going beyond that, right? So we are transferring the hard-earned cash and wealth of our country into the pockets of other countries or other entities who are not Pakistanis. So will we be able to grow that way? I don't think so. So we have to ensure that these privatizations lead to sectoral changes and competition, etc. Number one. अच्छा पाकिस्तान में जैसे आरिफ साहब ने कहा बैंकिंग सेक्टर आज से जब 30 साल पहले बैंक्स प्राइवेटाइज हुई थी तो क्या हाल था, बैड लोन्स का क्या हाल था, देखें आज बहुत बेहतर है. पीटीसी आप देख लें, there have been a couple which have not been great success stories, but mostly privatizations have been good for the consumers, for the investors. Actually, there are two big problems with privatization in Pakistan, and that's the question I've been struggling with. एक तो एक certain theme है कि जी लोग जो है ना वो पैसे बना लेंगे. ये एक बड़ी एक at a deeper level ये एक थीम है कि जी पैसे बन गए. लोग कहते हैं जी जिन्होंने हबीब बैंक लिया, जिन्होंने यूबीएल लिया, देखें जी कितने पैसे बना लिए. बट वेल्थ क्रिएशन तो ऐसे ही होगी ना, somebody will make the wealth. अब पाकिस्तान में because of concentration of wealth in few hands, and that's true for a lot of developing countries. अब ये तो नहीं हो सकता कि हमारी disparity of income भी ठीक हो जाए, wealth widespread हो जाए, हम और फिर ये privatization हो नहीं सकता. It's a chicken and egg problem. आपको पहले प्राइवेटाइजेशन करनी पड़ेगी. Some people will make a lot of money and part of that money will come to the government in the form of tax revenue. और उसके बाद जब वो मुल्क की इकोनॉमी बेहतर होगी, फाइनेंशियल इंक्लूजन बेहतर होगी, एंटरप्रेन्योरशिप बेहतर होगी, ह्यूमन कैपिटल मुल्क में रहेगा, तब मुल्क में बाकी भी लोग बिजनेस में आएंगे. तो यू हैव टू गो थ्रू दिस प्राइवेट सेक्टर पार्टिसिपेशन बिफोर यू अचीव दैट बिगर एंड. पहली बात तो ये जो थीम है ना कि लोग पैसे बना लेंगे, तो पैसे बनाएंगे तो मुल्क के पैसे बनेंगे, वरना नहीं बनेंगे. अच्छा, सेकंड थीम ये, देयर इज अ सर्टेन greed for control among some people, and it's very, very deep and very and it just doesn't go. अब हमें गवर्नमेंट को हम आर्गुमेंट फ्लिप कर देते हैं जी गवर्नमेंट बिजनेस करे. गवर्नमेंट क्यों बिजनेस करे? व्हाट आर वी गेटिंग? अब मैं लोगों से कहता हूँ जी पीएसओ में बेच देनी चाहिए. लोग कहते हैं जी स्ट्रेटेजिक है. अगर स्ट्रेटेजिक है तो आपको स्टोरेजेस चाहिए तो आप एक अलग एंटिटी कार्व आउट कर लें. जो मुल्क को स्टोरेजेस चाहिए फॉर स्ट्रेटेजिक रीजन वो आप अलग कर दें. बाकी जो डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन है रिटेल नेटवर्क उसको आप बेच दें. सुई स्ट्रेटेजिक है, कहाँ से स्ट्रेटेजिक है? यूएफजी लॉसेज आप देखें, बाकी चीज़ें देखें, वहाँ पर आज किसको गैस का कनेक्शन मिल रहा है, कौन चोरी कर रहा है, इस्लामाबाद में किसको पता है? कुछ चीज़ों में आपको देखना होगा. फॉर एग्जाम्पल डिस्कोस को हम देख रहे हैं. नाउ इट्स नॉट ईजी बट इट्स चैलेंजिंग. बट प्राइवेटाइज डिस्कोस हो सकती हैं एट अ सर्टन प्राइस. बट देन हमें देखना पड़ेगा कि क्या कंज्यूमर को और पाकिस्तानी पब्लिक को जो हमारा सोशल इंटरेस्ट है वो सर्व होगा नहीं होगा, तो वो सब देखना पड़ेगा. बट वी हैव टू लेट गो ऑफ द कंट्रोल एंड वी हैव टू लेट पीपल मेक मनी. उसके बगैर जो बिगर ऑब्जेक्टिव है ग्रोथ का वो अचीव नहीं होगा. आई एम श्योर कि आज से पहले कोई 20-25 साल से सारी बातें हो रही होंगी प्रीमियम प्राइवेटाइजेशन. आई थिंक विल हैव टू क्रॉस दीज हर्डल्स एंड विल हैव टू ब्रिंग इट आउट इन द ओपन, व्हिच वी आर डूइंग राइट नाउ. Only then we'll be able to succeed.
Thank you so much, sir. And I completely agree that privatization का मतलब ये है कि it's just not the entity. The impact should actually be transferred to the sectors, to the industry, and of course businesses are supposed to make money. No profit. अगर profitable ventures नहीं होंगे, nobody would want to come into this sector. But maybe during the lunch break you can get some time with the Minister Arif Saab, Naz, and Farrukh Saab. Thank you so much.